Picture this. It is 2 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Oh man, the absolute worst time of the week.
Right. You are standing at the front of a classroom or, a boardroom, completely exhausted.
Just running on fumes at that point.
Exactly. You're trying to guide 25 different minds through a lesson. The air feels stale, the clock is ticking incredibly loudly, and there is that one student.
There's always that one.
Always. They are slumped in their chair, staring a hole right through you, and just completely refusing to even pick up a pencil.
Or they're actively disrupting the room, like tearing up the paper you just handed out.
Yeah, and in that exact moment, as the frustration just boils over, a single, really exhausting thought flashes through your mind. You think, why are they doing this to me?
It is such a painful, isolating feeling. And I mean, it's incredibly common.
It really is.
Whether you are managing a classroom of seventh graders or, a team of adults in a corporate office, when someone constantly pushes back against your instructions, the natural human response is to feel like you're under a personal attack.
Like your authority is being intentionally undermined.
Exactly. But what if taking it personally is actually a trap?
Well, to figure out how to escape that trap, we're doing a deep dive today into a really compelling stack of sources.
We've got neuroclinical frameworks, educational research summaries, and a highly specific AI prompt library.
Yeah, and our mission today is to help you fundamentally shift your mindset. We want to take you from being an exhausted sufferer of behavior.
I love that phrase, sufferer of behavior.
Right. We want to take you from that to a calm, objective clinical researcher.
That is a profound shift to make, because once you put on that clinical researcher lens, you realize the person frustrating you probably isn't trying to make your life miserable at all.
They're just struggling to survive.
Yes, struggling to survive in an environment that their brain just isn't wired to handle. Understanding that mismatch is the key to finally finding some professional peace.
Okay, let's unpack this. How exactly do we move from feeling constantly offended and burned out to becoming this zen, objective clinical researcher? Like, where do we even start?
Well, the first step is looking at what is actually happening inside the brain of that disruptive person.
Right, the biology of it.
Exactly. To do that, we need to dismantle what our sources call the assumption trap.
The assumption trap.
Yeah, it's the core reason so many educators and managers just totally burn out.
Because the assumption trap is that tendency we all have to view neurological symptoms as personality flaws.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head. We look at a kid who won't start their math worksheet and we label them lazy.
Or defiant.
Right. Or we look at an employee who misses a deadline and call them careless.
And when you label a biological roadblock as a personality flaw, you fall into the trap of the hero teacher or the hero manager.
Which is so dangerous. You convince yourself that you are going to fix this person's attitude through sheer willpower, charisma and discipline.
But you cannot willpower away a biological reality.
You really can't. Trying to do so inevitably leads to total exhaustion and a lingering feeling of incompetence when your sheer force of will just fails to change them.
So what's the bedrock principle we have to adopt instead?
That behavior is communication. Always.
Always.
If someone is acting out disengaged or aggressive, it is rarely a calculated plot to ruin your Tuesday. Most behaviors that get labeled as defiance are actually failures of executive functioning.
Let's just define that for a second, because executive functioning gets thrown around a lot.
It does.
It's essentially the brain's management system, right?
Right.
Like the CEO of the mind, handling working memory, emotional control, and task initiation.
Exactly. And when a student's cognitive load exceeds the capacity of that CEO, the system crashes.
And cognitive load is just the total amount of mental energy required to exist and process information in any given moment.
Right. So when that load gets too heavy, people don't politely raise their hand and say, "Excuse me, my executive functioning is currently overwhelmed."
I wish they did.
Me too. But they don't. They shut down or they explode.
Our sources point to researcher John Sweller and his cognitive load theory for this. It breaks this mechanism down perfectly.
Sweller talks about intrinsic load, which is the actual difficulty of the concept you're trying to learn.
And extraneous load, which is all the unnecessary mental gymnastics required to access that concept.
Right.
Think of it this way. It's like asking someone to drive a manual transmission car in heavy traffic.
Oh, stressful.
Very. While simultaneously learning calculus.
That's a great analogy.
The vehicle, which in a classroom might be the dense written instructions, the physical act of handwriting, or even the sensory noise of the fluorescent lights, is taking up so much brain space.
So much space that they have absolutely no room left for the destination, which is the actual academic concept you want them to learn. What's fascinating here is that by simply reducing this extraneous load, we aren't lowering the bar.
That is such a massive misconception. Teachers always worry about that.
They do. They worry that if they modify an assignment, they are letting the student off easy or diluting the curriculum.
But you aren't lowering the academic standard at all. You are simply clearing the biological path so they can actually reach the standard. But wait, if we accept that this is a biological roadblock, that the manual transmission is the issue, not the driver's desire to reach the destination, how are we supposed to diagnose that on the fly?
That's the tricky part, right?
Yeah, I mean, we aren't doctors. We can't put our students into an MRI machine.
No, but we achieve that by strictly separating the individual's profile from their personality. This is where the clinical researcher mindset really takes over.
Looking past the surface behavior.
Yes. You have to look past the behavior and understand the neurological wiring beneath it. The sources provide incredible clarity on several specific profiles that frequently cause friction.
Let's break those down, because this is where so much classroom conflict originates. I want to look at ODD versus PDA first.
ODD being oppositional defiant disorder.
Right, which has traditionally been viewed as a behavioral choice. It's that classic, deliberate struggle for power dynamics where the student actively wants to be in charge.
Contrast that with PDA, which stands for pathological demand avoidance.
Which is completely different.
Entirely different. PDA is increasingly understood as a profile on the autism spectrum. For a student with PDA, any demand, even something as gentle as, please open your book, is perceived by their amygdala as a literal physical threat.
The amygdala being the brain's primitive alarm system.
Exactly. The part of the brain constantly scanning the environment for danger.
So for a PDA profile, a teacher giving an instruction registers as a loss of autonomy. And that loss of autonomy trips the alarm.
Their brain literally interprets, do your math, the same way it would interpret a tiger jumping out at the bushes.
Wow.
It triggers an involuntary fight, flight, or freeze response. It is an anxiety-driven survival mechanism. They aren't choosing to defy you. Their nervous system has hijacked their brain.
That is wild. And then you have profiles like ADHD inattentive, or FASD, right?
Yeah.
Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder.
Yes. With ADHD, the brain fundamentally lacks dopamine, which acts as the chemical spark plug for task initiation.
So without that spark plug, starting a non-preferred task is biologically excruciating.
It's like trying to start a car with no battery. And with FASD, you are dealing with structural brain differences that affect working memory and processing speed.
So a student with FASD might perfectly execute a math concept on Monday.
But by Tuesday, their brain has simply lost access to that neural pathway.
To a teacher, that looks like the student is gaslighting them, or just refusing to try.
But clinically, it is an unpredictable biological barrier. We also see this with dysgraphia, where there's a disconnect between language processing and fine motor skills.
Right, so when a student with dysgraphia refuses to write an essay, they aren't being stubborn.
No, their brain is hitting a neurological wall trying to translate a thought into the physical act of moving a pencil.
Okay, let me push back on this for a second, because I can hear the exhausted teachers listening right now.
Fair enough.
When I am standing in that classroom and a student with PDA looks me in the eye and absolutely refuses my instructions, it still feels like a power play.
Of course it does. Your heart rate goes up.
My face gets hot. Knowing the biology is great for my empathy, but, what is the tactical fix in that exact moment?
The tactical fix relies on a subtle but incredibly powerful shift in how you communicate. You move from imperative language to declarative language.
Okay, break that down. Imperative language is direct commands, right?
Exactly. Finish your map, sit down, get to work. For a PDA profile, that imperative command trips the amygdala's alarm wire.
Right, whereas declarative language is observation-based.
Yes.
Like the example in our sources, instead of commanding finish your map, you just say, I'm noticing this map is unfinished.
You're just stating a fact about the environment.
You're inviting cooperation without issuing a demand.
And by stating a fact, you bypass the amygdala entirely. It gives the student's brain the autonomy it desperately needs to feel safe.
And when the nervous system feels safe, anxiety drops, and their executive functioning can finally come back online to process the task. Here's where it gets really interesting. By knowing the profile and adjusting your language, you achieve what the sources call objectivity.
Yes, objectivity is key.
Think about it. You simply cannot be offended by a neurological profile. You wouldn't get mad at a student who needs glasses for squinting at the board.
Exactly. Getting mad at a PDA student for a threat response is like being mad at a fire alarm for detecting smoke.
Right. It's just doing what it's wired to do.
That objectivity is the ultimate armor for your peace of mind. You stop taking the friction personally because you realize it was never about you in the first place.
You are just part of the environment their brain is trying to navigate. Now, I know the next hurdle. This is a great theory. I would love to be a clinical researcher.
Yeah.
But I have 150 students.
That's the reality for so many.
I do not have hours to sit around reading 50-page psych ed reports to figure out everyone's specific neurological profile.
And that is a completely valid point. The hero teacher tries to manually analyze every student and ends up drowning in paperwork.
So if we don't have the time, how do we make this sustainable?
We bring in generative AI as our clinical partner.
Using modern AI tools as a clinical translator completely changes the game, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Spending 10 minutes with an AI tool on the front end saves you 10 hours of emotional exhaustion and classroom conflict on the back end.
Let's walk through how this actually works. Say I just received a dense 10-page medical report from the school psychologist with a diagnosis of dysgraphia.
Okay.
I'm not a doctor. I'm an English teacher. I need to know what this looks like in a room with desks and chairs.
Right, you need practical application.
Exactly. Our sources outline a specific translator prompt for this exact scenario.
You open your AI tool, and because large language models are trained on vast amounts of clinical data and pedagogical frameworks, they can instantly cross-reference these two worlds.
You just type something like, I am a classroom teacher with a student who has dysgraphia.
Right, and you say, based on clinical research, what are the top 3 cognitive barriers this student faces regarding long-form writing?
And then the crucial part, please translate these medical terms into observable classroom behaviors so I can stop taking them personally.
You are literally programming the AI to give you the objective lens.
So the AI translates the jargon, and I realize my student isn't being stubborn. The physical act of writing is literally draining all their cognitive load.
Exactly.
But I still have an essay to teach tomorrow. What is my next move?
This is where you use the access point generator.
The access point generator.
Yeah, you ask the AI to build alternative pathways to the lesson using the Universal Design for Learning Framework, or UDL.
UDL is fantastic.
It is. You instruct the AI to build 3 specific doors to your lesson: an academic access point, a narrative access point, and a visual access point.
The sources use a great example for this.
Yeah.
Let's say you are teaching the causes of the American Revolution. The academic door might be your standard scaffolded reading text, but the AI will also generate a narrative door.
Like a story.
Yeah, maybe a character-driven story about a specific family divided by the war, which appeals to students who need emotional connection or a dopamine hit to focus.
And then it generates a visual door, like a cause and effect graphic organizer or a timeline map, which bypasses the heavy reading and writing load entirely.
You just plug your lesson topic and the student's barrier into the prompt, and the AI cross-references the UDL framework to build those 3 doors instantly.
And if you are dealing with moment-to-moment classroom management, say you need a high-anxiety student to clear their desk for a transition.
You don't have to guess what to say.
No, you use the declarative language script maker. You ask the AI, give me 3 examples of declarative language to invite cooperation for transitioning subjects without triggering a threat response.
And it gives you those perfect non-demanding scripts. Instead of put your math book away, it prompts you to say, it is time for our science materials to be on our desks.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire philosophy of universal design for learning posits something revolutionary.
That disability lives in the environment, not the student.
Yes. If a student can't access your lesson, the environment is disabled. By using AI to generate these diverse access points and communication scripts, you are instantly redesigning the environment to fit the profile.
So we have the biological understanding. We understand how to use AI to translate the medical jargon and build the access points.
Check and check.
Now, we have to talk about how this actually protects your peace and dignity at the end of a long day.
Because shifting out of the sufferer of behavior trap is hard work.
Really hard work. And there is a specific danger we have to avoid along the way, which our sources call heroic pity.
Pity is a very easy trap to fall into once you learn the biological realities of a student's struggles.
It is. You see the FASD diagnosis or the severe ADHD, and your heart just breaks for them.
Pity says, oh, this poor kid, their working memory is so compromised they just can't do it, so I'll just pass them.
I'll let them sit in the back and color while the rest of the class works.
Right. But pity is toxic. It robs the student of their agency and dignity.
And for the teacher, It quietly breeds massive resentment. You go home feeling like a martyr who is carrying the weight of the world.
The clinical shift demands we move from pity to informed empathy.
I love that distinction.
Pity lowers the academic standard. Informed empathy changes the path to the standard.
Informed empathy says, I understand that your brain struggles with task initiation. That is a biological fact.
Therefore, I will provide a visual access point to help you start. But you are still going to learn the causes of the American Revolution.
You hold them to a realistic high standard without trying to step in and save them from the work.
Exactly. To make this actionable, the sources outline a tactical mantra for the clinical researcher. Research, refine, release.
Research, refine, release. This is the path to finding peace in this profession.
Step 1 is research. You use your AI tools to understand the underlying cognitive barrier. You figure out what the manual transmission is.
Step 2 is refine. You adjust the environment. You provide the denified access point, that academic, narrative, or visual door we just discussed.
And step 3 is the hardest but most vital part, release. You let go of the outcome.
Your professional duty is to research the barrier and open the door. Your duty is not to force the student to walk through it.
You cannot control another human being's nervous system. You just can't.
Which brings up a very real scenario. What happens when you do all of this? You research the dysgraphia. You refine the lesson and provide 3 beautiful AI-generated access points.
And the student still puts their head down on the desk and refuses to engage.
Right. This is where the final tool in our AI prompt library comes in, the reasonable effort defender.
This tool is how you achieve true professional sovereignty. If the student won't engage, you use AI to help you draft an email to the parents or administration.
But the key here is that it's a data-driven, dispassionate email.
Yes. You tell the AI, I provided a student with this specific profile the following 3 access points for today's lesson. They still chose not to engage.
Help me draft a factual email that notes the lack of engagement, highlights the specific clinical accommodations provided, and tactfully transfers the responsibility for the next step back to the home or the student.
That email becomes your digital anchor. It proves reasonable effort.
You aren't complaining about the student's attitude. You are simply reporting data from your clinical observation. So what does this all mean? It means the fulfillment of your professional duty. You have an irrefutable documented record that you provided the door.
If the student doesn't walk through it, that is a factual outcome. It is not a personal failure on your part.
You did your job, and you did it with dignity and expertise.
That is how you go home with a quiet mind. You have shifted the burden of behavior.
You shift the burden of behavior from your heart, where it causes stress and burnout, to the student's brain, where it belongs.
You use clinical research and AI not to do your job for you, but to protect your peace.
You stop taking it personally because you finally see the machinery behind the actions.
This raises an important question, one that goes far beyond the classroom or the office.
Oh, absolutely.
We talked about how the universal design for learning teaches us that friction lives in the environment, not the person. If we apply this clinical researcher lens to our own lives outside of work, how might it change things?
Think about the people frustrating you right now. A spouse, a friend, a family member.
Are they actually being difficult on purpose, or is there simply a mismatch between their invisible profile and the environment or expectations you are asking them to navigate?
That is a powerful thought to leave on. The next time you find yourself staring at someone, feeling your blood pressure rise, thinking, why are they doing this to me?
Just remember, it's probably not about you at all.
Put on your researcher hat, find the barrier, offer a different door, and then give yourself permission to release the outcome. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go out there, research, refine, and release. We'll catch you next time.